right, welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as money, and we know that. Super excited to be in here today. We have a great guest host with us today.
Yeah, really excited. Dan Miragliotta is here, one of the most legendary UFC and MMA officials in history. Really excited to have him here. He got to come up to Schenectady today and did a training. So I'm going to let him tell us a little bit about his day and what his experience has been like in Schenectady. But yeah, welcome to Your Time.
And Your Money.
All right. So how was your day in Schenectady, Dan? How did everything go?
Everything was smooth. Had a bunch of guys that were knowledgeable about the sport, and they wanted to get a little more knowledge on being a referee or a judge. So we did a seminar down there and had a nice little outcome, and good participants, knowledgeable.
I feel like the sport of MMA is growing just constantly, and it's popping up. The semi-pro leagues are popping up all over the place, and professional MMA has become the real deal. Obviously, I think it's overtaken boxing. Obviously, it's a huge draw. How many people showed up to the event today? Did you have more than 50? Was there just a ton of people there?
It was just a seminar, a training seminar for people who want to be a judge or a referee.
Okay.
Which most people don't want to do. There's too much pressure, and with social media nowadays, and no matter what you do, you're kind of under a microscope. And
I know somebody else who does a job like that.
Hey, I was always told as a kid, you don't throw yourself in the middle of two people fighting, and that's what you do for a living. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah. I feel like a little Oreo here between two really big guys. So.
Well, I mean, he does have to official some of the most dangerous people in the world, so he's got to stay in great shape, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons we wanted to have you on today was to really talk about that experience, kind of behind the scenes, and what a person goes through at a level where they're dealing with, people that are, have egos, people that are famous in some cases, people that acquire large assets and a lot of money. And sometimes maybe you hear, even behind the scenes, how destructive they are in their own habits with money and how that can kind of set them back. They think, oh, I got one fight under me and I won a lot of money, and then all of a sudden, they're broke a couple weeks down the road or anything along that lines. So we're excited to have you on today. When we have guest speakers come in, we always like to just kind of let you tell us a little bit about your background. Now, I always do research and show prep beforehand, so I do know some stories about you breaking your neck at a beach and things along that lines. And but
Margaret's stalking you.
Yeah. Why don't you tell our listeners kind of a little bit about yourself, how you got into the industry that you're in now?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, things happen for a reason, and sometimes you don't understand when they happen. I broke my neck when I was 14 years old. Broke 2 vertebrae. I spent 6 months in the hospital, laying in traction. And, celebrating my 15th birthday laying on my back in the hospital wasn't so fun. And I used to play football and baseball. I wasn't bad at football, but I was pretty good at baseball. And when I broke my neck, in my eyes, my whole future was done. I'm like, how am I supposed to go and play ball again? Here I am going into my sophomore year of high school, and I'm missing the first 6 months of school. So I thought by doing martial arts, I could get coordination and get my agility back and hopefully get back into the shape where I could try out for the team in my junior or senior year. And I started doing the martial arts, and I kind of just fell in love with it. And I remember I was only a kid delivering newspapers. I was 15 years old, and I had to pay for my own. My parents didn't have the money to pay for martial arts academy. It was 2 towns over. So I used to have a little newspaper out in the morning, go deliver 150 papers in the morning, go collect the money on Fridays and Saturdays, and go pay my karate instructor for classes down in Cranford, New Jersey. And I would drive my bike 2 towns over, and I signed up for a 200 lesson program, and it was supposed to last me 6 months, but I was going so often, almost every day except for Sunday, my lesson plan was over in 3 months. So now I'm behind with no lessons, and I have to continue to pay, so I worked harder, more money, and signed up for more classes, and just stuck with it. After high school, I had received my black belt, and I was teaching classes at other academies and helping people out, and someone said, man, you should open up your own school. So at 21 years old, after I'd gotten married, my wife and I opened up an academy, and we were teaching kids Kempo karate and mixing up things. Because back then, there was no MMA yet. This was in 85 and 86. Yeah. It was just martial arts. But I had always liked different disciplines. I was a 5th degree black belt in Kempo karate. I was a 1st degree black belt in Shoru, Shukukai karate. And I had won the nationals with the WCAF doing full contact eskrima. I was a black belt in Kali, Darnice. And I was mixing things up already. And when MMA came out, it was called Valley Tudo or No Holds Barred back then. It wasn't even called MMA, actually. I had my own school, and we were already training in that kind of a discipline. So my fighters were all like, damn, we would love to fight, but there's nowhere to fight. What do we do?
Right.
a good buddy of mine was running shows down in Virginia, Gary Miles, American Karate Center, and he said to me, "Hey, can you bring some of your fighters down to my school? We'll let your guys fight our guys. You know, we got some other people from Connecticut and South, North Carolina, South Carolina." So I started bringing my guys down there, and he goes, "Bro, you want to do this in New Jersey, because then we could bring our fighters up to you." So my very first event was Bama. It was called Bama Fight Nights, and it was Matt Serra fought, Nick Serra fought.
Matt the Terror Serra.
And these are guys that fought in UFC, and Matt was a champion in the UFC, actually,
Yeah.
Eddie Alvarez fought several times. He used to be from the Fight Club down in Pennsylvania, in Philly. Fight Factory was called, Fight Factory. And, all these guys fought at our shows. We ran 24 events. It was a gray area. It wasn't legal, but it wasn't illegal, so I was able to run the events. I was my own promoter, matchmaker, and referee. My students were judges. Other students of other schools that brought fighters, their guys were judges.
Right.
It was like a family-run thing. I mean, like I said, we ran 24 shows, 12 to 15 fights, 20 fights every night. Back then, of course, it was not legal, so we didn't have doctors and medicals and stuff. Fighters were paying
all the logistics.
to fight.
All the logistics.
Yeah, the stuff that you're supposed to do, right?
I mean, you're legitimately building a business in a field that didn't exist.
You really
Like I said,
did.
Dan, I knew Dan was a pioneer of this, and that's why it was so important that I wanted people to hear your story, because the logistics behind starting something like that, you had a mountain on your back. And
Well, I wish I knew guys like you back then, because then I'm sure it would have been something much larger, something more developed. Where when I was doing it, it was my wife and I. I mean, we did everything from weighing fighters in to cooking sausage, peppers, and onions in the kitchen.
Giving them some love. Yeah, giving them some love.
Giving them love, giving them ice packs when they were cut up and bleeding. I mean, I had fighters sometimes, a guy didn't show up, and I would make a call on the microphone right in the middle of the fights. "Hey, I need somebody at 145 who wants to fight." Brrr, you get 5 guys coming running down. "Oh, man, I want to fight, I want to fight." I had then I had 3 more fights on, because like I said, there was no medicals back then. Guys just fought and had fun, and they didn't even get paid to fight. They were paying us $35 registration fee to fight.
Well, and that's something that's good that I want to segue there, because Tim has created a great structure here at Cage Wars, where guys have a safe place to fight. There's a doctor, there's a great
paramedics,
there's a great official in the middle making sure they're being smart. But I mean, that's where I want to give you a lot of credit, Dan. And the reason why I wanted our listeners to hear from you is the fact that you had to start from scratch, and you had to build this empire. And now all the work that you've done is now just part of your credential, which is unbelievable, And one thing I want to tell you, though, is that for athletes that are traveling, and you probably see it all the time still, as you travel, right? You go somewhere, you don't know what to expect. You have no idea what's there, right? And that's, one of my experiences when I went to Dallas with the Cowboys was they pick you up in a limo, they bring you to a Homestead Suites, they give you, meals, right? And it's comforting and it's nice. It's a home away from home. So that's one of the things is, I start to work with athletes and I want to help them. Just having some of those redundancies built into their schedule and keeping a tight schedule is a huge, huge win for them.
Oh yeah, I've done shows in some countries that I probably shouldn't have been at, and you're left at the airport.
Right.
Like when I went to Colombia, no one even spoke English that I was dealing with. I had one guy that would text me and we would have to use translation through the phone. And then I get to the airport and there's no one there to pick me up.
Oh my goodness.
Now here I am, this big white guy standing in Colombia.
Right.
Standing out like
just
a
a target.
Yeah, just a target. Like, please take this guy, And you're calling and calling. I walked back in the airport. I was looking for a plane to go back home, and all of a sudden some guy tapped me on the shoulder and says, on a sign, "Are you Dan Miragliotta?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Were you supposed to be here half an hour ago, jerk off? I want to knock you out." I was so mad. We're not where you half an hour ago.
Like, come on, man.
No one's answering the phone.
Be where you're supposed to be, right?
Yeah, like you guys are getting picked up in limos. We're getting picked up in Ubers.
Uber didn't even exist back then, right? We didn't even have Ubers, but
Well, not me. I'm not getting picked up in limos. This guy might get picked up in
I
limos,
hate
but-
limos, man.
Well, I mean, when you work for bigger shows, like when I work for UFC or Bellator,
Sure.
BKFC, bare knuckle fighting, they do that. They pick you up at the airport, they bring you to your hotel. Well, everything's done prior to you getting there,
Right.
And it's well organized. And same thing with the fighters. They'll get out there 3 or 4 days early, where I get out there usually the day before.
Yeah.
And it's much different than it was when I first started out. Because don't forget, I've been doing this since
Long. Well, I mean, you're making
95.
Listen,
97.
you're making great points, and it's important athletes hear it. Before guys got paid, and people have misconceptions here. They see the Conor McGregors of the world that get paid, $5-6 million. That's not real for everybody.
No.
There's a huge portion of the NFL, just like there's a huge portion of the MMA world, where they're literally fighting to survive.
Paycheck
right?
to paycheck.
I mean, it's literally paycheck to paycheck. Because if you're a fighter and you train for 6 months, right? Well, you gotta sleep somewhere. you got to eat your meals, you got to train. And when you're training, you can't have a job unless your job benefits you for fighting. Like, Stipe Miocic is a firefighter. So that helps him in his fighting career because he can have a job one day, like 24-hour shift, and then he gets 3 days off to train. So, there is some important pieces for a young athlete or a young fighter coming up that they need to start building in redundancies to their saving. Because when I was a kid, I didn't know any better, right? You go into a sport, you get a paycheck. Oh yeah, I got all this money. Now what do I do with it? Right?
And they're just
go blowing it, right?
Yeah.
You got to think about later. You got to think about taxes. I just made $60,000 on a fight, right? Well, how much belongs to Uncle Sam? Right. Right. Well, there goes $20,000.
And at $60,000, you got to pay your trainer. You got to pay your manager.
Manager.
Your coaches, your nutritional coach. All these people get paid out of their purse.
Yeah.
The average Joe Schmo doesn't realize it's like, oh, that guy was making $70,000 a fight. He fought 3 times. That's $210,000. Yeah, $210,000 net. Not what he put in his pocket.
Yeah,
gross. Now he's put in his pocket. Gross. Now he's got to pay taxes. He's got to pay all these people.
He broke his hand, right? Oh, he broke his hand. Now what? Out of pocket. Out of pocket.
A lot of them don't even have insurance, because most guys are, like you said, most of these fighters either live in the gym or they're not in a place where they have a job that's a full-time job where they get benefits.
Yep.
So a lot of them don't even have insurance. So if they get hurt at a big event, well then that injury will be taken care of by that promoter.
By the event, yeah.
Thank God, it's come to that nowadays. But some of these smaller shows, you're done fighting, you walk out, you're done.
Well, I'm again, I don't want to go too big, too fast, but like the unionization, like, the NFL has a PA and the MLB has a PA. I'm surprised that, MMA that doesn't exist yet. Maybe you're a pioneer there. Who knows, right?
I think the only reason why it would be almost impossible right now is because, the NFL is the NFL.
Right.
So yeah,
the shield, right?
You
The
have
logo.
17 how many teams are in the NFL right now? I don't even know. There's so many.
There's like 18 teams.
Okay, so let's say there's 18 teams, but they're all a part of the NFL.
Right.
Where MMA, you have
all
one
these
big
different
show.
fractions.
You have the UFC. You have the second show below that. Bellator.
Yeah.
And bare knuckle fighting championships right now is doing great, but they're the only one really that's doing good in that area.
That space, yeah.
Boxing, forget about it. You'll never get it in boxing because everybody's all out for themselves only, and they don't really give a crap about a fighter.
Yeah.
They care about what they're making, how much they can put in their pocket. Where, with us, with just one big organization, how are you going to get all these fighters? If the UFC stable has 250 fighters right now, let's just say, Bellator probably has another 250. IFL might have 150. Ring of Combat, LFC, Cage Fighting Championships. There's so many other smaller ones that are on UFC Fight Pass.
Yeah.
Maybe they have 50, 60 fighters in there, and they're all different people. How are you going to get all of them together and every organization to agree on a union?
And have the same rules.
I've been in the union my whole life.
And have the same rules.
And have the same rules. It's hard enough to do that. States, well, let me tell you, there's the unified rules. Kiss my ass, unified rules. I go to states where, we still haven't voted on the new ones from 22.
Right.
So what are we following? The ones from 2016. Are you kidding me?
7 years old.
It's not fair to the fighters. They need to know. Everybody should be on the same page, same rules, all throughout the country, and that's it.
I can't agree more. I can't agree more. And that, well, listen, you open up a good point about the local rules here in New York. Well, Santa Barbara is constantly at those Cage Wars events. He's one of the guys that not unionized, but streamlined the rules so that we could do an event like that. And we can enjoy it and have guys have an opportunity and girls have an opportunity to fight.
He's our state politician, in case you didn't know.
No, I've been a couple times.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Yeah,
he
he sits right next to me, and
impressive.
again, I think the key to success here is opportunity. Right, we want to give people opportunities to perform and be successful. And what I want most importantly is people to know how important it is that they have a guy like you there, and a guy like me, because I never got the chance to do it because UFC wasn't as big as it was, when I retired from football. I wish I could have done it. I remember I was wrestling Matt Hughes. I went, one of my buddies, Chad, had a gym, and Matt Hughes came in, and he was just lighting people up, right? And he comes and he tries to shoot on me, and he's like, wait a minute. He's like, wait a minute. And after like 20 minutes of wrestling, his coach comes over. He's like, dude, he's like, you should be a fighter. And I'm like, man, I can't do it, man. It's just such a huge commitment for what? To get kicked in the head,
they weren't getting
paid
either.
They weren't getting paid anything.
$1,500.
He's getting paid. I remember Matt Hughes. He was one of the highest winning middleweights in UFC history. He got paid like $400,000 for all of his effort.
And that wasn't until he was champion and he was well known. All the fights prior to that, those guys, their contracts were nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, a couple $1,000.
Yep.
So
it's come a long way, thank God.
And you know what? I think it's going to go even further.
Yeah.
And I think sports in general, I think, are coming to a point where they're under the microscope and people know that there's there's issue for injury, and there's CTE, and there's brain issues, and there's health issues if you don't train correctly or recover correctly. A guy taking on a fight too soon where he's not ready to come back and fight. I think it's an important piece.
Well, a lot of the younger fighters don't realize what the senior fighters, the more established fighters, have went through getting to that point.
Oh God, no!
Everyone
wants to make a name for
themselves.
It's
like your point. You look at somebody like Conor McGregor that won XYZ millions of dollars in a fight, but they didn't see all the training that he put in and the years of hard work and the years of struggle.
Oh man,
and even in officiating. I mean, all the bouts that you must have had to take, and nights away from the family. I mean, I think you have 2 kids, right?
Yep, two sons.
Two sons. Are they following in Dad's footsteps, or are they?
Only in work. They're both in the union. Okay. They both work in electricians union.
Okay.
They both trained with me since they were able to walk. They were crawling on a mat, rolling around with Boss Root and Enzo Gracie, Bart Vale.
Oh my God, I would love to meet Boss Root.
I mean, all these guys that were at my gym doing seminars, my kids were little.
Yeah.
They grew up with that. They grew up in karate. They trained and they used to compete in karate tournaments. But then as they got older, they were such good athletes that they excelled in sports.
So I have to ask the question then. So as a father, at what point have they been able to take you, or can you still take them?
He knows all the buttons to push.
Hey,
old man strike never goes away, dude.
The standing joke with my kids, I coached everything that they did, right? So the standing joke with all their friends and all these kids that still hang out with my boys are always like, man, we can't wait till you're 80 and in a wheelchair. We're going to kick your ass. Making us do laps and push-ups.
He's still got it, man. He looks great. He's in great shape.
Yeah, you have to ask, because as a dad, it's always in the back of your mind. When's my kid going to take me down?
Well, it's funny because when I was only 17, I just got my black belt in Shukukai karate, right? I thought I was a tough kid, trained a lot of fights, a lot of tournaments. And me and my old man always got along good, but, we bickered, typical Italians,
Sure.
But there was always respect in there. So, one day we were going at it. My dad was so mad at me, and he said to me, "Go get the gloves." You want me to get the effing gloves? I'll get the gloves. Now I'm 6'4", 280 at the time. My dad's typical little Italian, 5'10",
yeah, buck 90.
Go get the gloves.
Made of steel though. He's made of freaking steel.
Yeah, he probably would have broke me in half. But back then you think you're young, dumb, full of gum, young kid. Testosterone going out your ears. So I go downstairs, I get the gloves. I walk upstairs with the gloves, and my mother goes, "You may beat your father, but you're going to have to find another place to live, so it's your choice." And I thought of that, I'm like, she's right, I might kick his butt, but where am I going to live?
I got to sleep somewhere tonight, I want dinner.
So Mom won. But I remember it was yesterday, like, "Oh, you want to fight? I'll go get the gloves." Oh my God.
We're going to transition Community Spotlight. So this week's Community Spotlight is Cage Wars and MMA. Tim Rankins is the proprietor, and he's one of the reasons why the local area has done such a great job and given kids opportunities. You can find Tim at cagewarsmma.com. They host their events at Rivers Events Center. And if you haven't gone to an event yet, January 20th is the next one. You can see my ugly mug there. You can see Miragliotta there. And Esley likes to come once in a while, too. He'll grace us with his ever so kind presence. But, Cage Wars has been a great opportunity for young fighters in the area to really have an opportunity to get out there and show their skills. And I know a big fan of El Shaddai. He's a heavyweight from back in the day when I coached. And now he's on his way up the ranks in Cage Wars. And hopefully he propels himself to the next level, just like the heavyweight did Al. Moro. He's up to fighting at the next level. So big shout out to Tim and Cage Wars. We're excited for your next event. The only other thing I'd ask you, man, is as you build relationships with your coworkers, the officials that you travel with, what's it like backstage? I want our listeners to kind of get behind the scenes, like the intensity level. Is it just for TV? People don't know. Or is it real? Is that emotion? Is that raw, true emotion? Is it real behind the scenes?
Let me tell you something. If you knew what we all got paid, you would say, why are you doing it? So there's only one reason why we're doing it. It's because we love it. Yep. It's in our heart, and we've been doing it for so long. We really enjoy it. And the camaraderie between everybody when you get together at these events, it's like another family. I call my wife up, "Hey, I'm here. I got to the hotel. I'm safe. Everything's good." Boom, hang up. After that, I'm with this family now all of a sudden.
Right.
All the guys, we all go out for breakfast together. Before the fights, we go to get lunch together. After the fight, we go out and we discuss the fights. How do we get better? Oh, it was a split decision in this fight. How did you guys see it? Why did you score it that way? People look at some fights and they're like, "Oh, these judges must get paid by the UFC to, they wanted so and so."
Right, they're independent, right? They're independent judges.
Independent.
Yeah.
It's so not true.
Yeah.
It's 1,000% wrong.
Yeah.
These guys are working class guys. They're all martial artists. Most of them have fought. If they didn't fight, they're at least coaches or trainers or owners of schools. They've been through all the courses to train to get better. They're always constantly talking in groups and doing Zoom meetings and watching fights and watching videos.
I feel like people always look for the exception, right? The rule is that the majority of the fights go the way they should when it comes to a decision, right? But everyone's always looking for the exception because that's what makes the headline. Right? Oh, it was a decision that went the other way and it should have gone that way. Everyone wants a Monday morning quarterback, right? Gives us something to complain about.
And ironically, it's very similar to finance. Everybody has
100%.
Everybody has the rear view mirror approach to investing, and they say, "Oh, well, back in whatever, I would have done this." Well, they didn't. They didn't make the profit off of it, and then they're questioning, "Well, why was over here and my portfolio went down 4%?" But they don't say like, "Oh, well, you're down 4%, but you could have been down 25%."
Right.
We saved you 21% on your decline. And it's that second guessing, and I would imagine you get that as well because people can't see the angle that you see when you're in a ring
behind the scenes, right?
What
you see.
It's different being. I mean, I fought in the past. I know a little bit about being very close to somebody and just seeing different angles as far as whether somebody actually hit somebody, and you can take a hit and say, "Oh wow, that looked like a really bad hit, but it wasn't." Right. You know what I mean? Other times it just could be a tap.
Why do you get knocked out?
Like a lot of Mike Tyson's hits. It looks like a tap, but like the guy's out. Like
his head turns 1 extra quarter of an inch the way it shouldn't.
So that rear view mirror approach, that.
Well, it's an important segue, Mark, and I really want to expand on that because you get questioned all the time as an official, and the same thing happens to us as advisors. We get questioned about, hey, why did this decision happen? And that's a good thing because you got to be able to have that conversation. That's where your expertise comes in really handy. Well, here's why we made that decision. Here's why we made that choice as a team. Because when you work with an advisor, just like when you work with a great official, you can defensively say, hey, here's why. Here's why I stopped the fight, man. Because you were sleeping on your feet, We've seen it before. Guys are, wobbling, and I think got their hands up, but they're sleeping.
They wake up and they're like, "Why?
What happened?
The fight?
What happened? Right?
Wait a minute, you've been hugging my leg for the last 5 seconds. You're trying to put it down. And you really want to know
I saw a video a month ago. A guy got knocked out. The ref got in between, and then the ref had to put the guy to sleep because he was fighting the ref.
Right.
That was crazy. It was wild. Yeah. But no, I think it's important that we really look at the fact that you're always going to be able to find the wrong in something. You got to find the right.
It's so easy.
You got to find the right, and you got to find a way to get better and learn from every experience.
Negativity gets you nowhere.
Nowhere
at all. You're going to learn from your mistakes, obviously, and if you're good, you will learn from your mistakes. If you're arrogant, conceited, and you don't want, if someone says to you, "Man, you lost 4% of my portfolio," and you have a negative attitude, well, you don't like it, go somewhere else. That doesn't help anybody.
Doesn't.
Look at it and say, well, listen, this is why we did it, like you just said. Right. We did this move for you, and we just saved you 21% because really what you had would have dropped 25%. It only dropped 4%. Our goal was to get you back up there, but right now, the way the economy is, whatever your reason is, you guys know that way better than I do.
Well, it's about like Mark said, you can't have a rearview mirror approach to it. You got to be proactive. You got to be thinking about why did we make this change, for what reason, right? And then how's it going to help me later on? Because those little changes, those little tweaks, those are the things that should be happening.
And there's no crystal ball. If there was, we'd all be rich.
We'd all be billionaires, But that's the thing is,
we'd be on a job.
Oh my God, 2 cents a share. Let's get 1,000 of them, right? But that's where diversification, knowing your craft, knowing what you have at your fingertips is a really important piece. So I'm going to let Mark close us out. We're hungry. We're going to go get some chow, and we're going to talk a little bit. But I'm going to let Mark close us out.
It was great having you on the show today, and
unbelievable.
We appreciate you coming up.
Unbelievable.
Some time with us today.
Thanks for the invitation.
And as always, like and subscribe. So if you're on YouTube video, like down here in the corner, there should be a button down here. Like and subscribe. That's always important for us. You can find the Estley Group at 43 British American Boulevard in Latham, 1-800-222-3202. And as always, it's your time.
And your money.
Adam Jones, Matthew Cirillo, Mark Estley, Financial Advisors, 43 British American Boulevard, first floor, Latham, New York, 12110, 518-724-5004. Cetera Investors is the marketing name of Cetera Investment Services. Securities and insurance products are offered through Cetera Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Today's Community Spotlight, Cage Wars, MMA.com, 1 Rush Street, Schenectady, New York, 12304, Rivers Event Center. Special thanks, Chris Conlon, owner and craftsman of Skulls and Sawdust. 518-852-3673, skullsandsawdust@gmail.com. Special thanks to Bobby Chase and Jeff Carlson of Next Evolution Media. 518-879-1779, bobbychase84@gmail.com. And last but not least, a very special thanks to our families for sacrificing many hours to let us see the vision through its reality. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not tailored towards any particular individual investment, objectives, or financial situation. This is not intended to be an offer or solicitation to purchase any security or insurance product. Cetera representatives do not provide legal, tax, or estate planning services. Should you require such service, you should consult a legal, tax, or estate planning professional. A diversified portfolio does not assure a profit or protect against loss in a declining market. Rebalancing may be a taxable event. Before you take any specific actions, be sure to consult with your tax advisor. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily views and opinions of Cetera Investment Services. Any recommendations mentioned in this episode are meant for educational purposes only and should not be construed as advice or personal recommendations. Always consult your financial advisor, tax advisor, or attorney for details related to your specific risks, goals, and objectives. Investments have risk and can lose value. They are not FDIC insured. The situations presented are hypothetical to illustrate key topics and should not be construed as actual client situations or experiences. The SC Group operates under Cetera Investors and is responsible for production of this show. All views and opinions are solely that of the SC Group. You should also obtain a prospectus prior to investing. Know your risk, costs, and fees associated with investments. The advice and strategies presented today are general in nature and should not be construed as planning until you consult with your attorney, CPA, for your specific situation. Dan Miragliotta and the MAA are independent of the SC Group and Cetera Investment Services. Cetera Investors is a marketing name of Cetera Investment Services, securities and insurance offered through Cetera Investments, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Services and Advisory Services LLC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other entity located at 43 British American Boulevard, first floor, Latham, New York 12110. Phone number 518-724-5004. Individuals affiliated with this broker-dealer firm are either investment advisory representatives who offer only investment advisory services and receive fees based on assets, or registered representatives who offer only brokerage services and receive transaction-based compensation, or both, an investment advisory representative or registered representative who can offer both types of service.